Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ram, Om Namah Shivaya, Assalamu Alaikum and praise the Lord. Now I'm going to talk about the big banking octopus, and this is episode 6, and here we're going to see about an octopus which is controlling all of you. So I want all of you to get rid of this big octopus. It is not only encompassing only the banking industry and your money, but it encompasses every single other thing like education and every other thing like that. So please see what you are making your children do, and also where you're keeping your money, and also what are you going to do when a disease comes to you, and how independent you are from big social entities. So today I would like to tell you about a big banking octopus, an international banking octopus. And in this octopus, we're going to pass through fields of health, finance, education, and literature, and so many other things, wars, military, etc. So I think we should be very aware of such things like this. So there are 13 families which are controlling this world according to many people. And there's lots of proof for this also. It cannot just be brushed away, calling it a wild conspiracy theory. I say that this might be totally true because these 13 families have been found out and their history has been found out. And I shall talk about these and how they have controlled the Federal Reserve and various of the central banks later on. But we know the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, etc., these families and the Kennedys and all of these guys have been sucking the blood of the entire earth through their finance methods, through their health methods, and through their agriculture methods, military methods, and so many more things. Here, I would like to tell you about the fractional reserve banking system. The first arm of this octopus, which has 8 arms of course, is the fractional reserve banking. We already studied about fractional reserve banking. So let's see a small diagram of it and what it can cause. First thing is that fractional reserve banking causes big inflation, which in turn causes crisis, which in turn gives economic control to the big bankers. Because when a crisis comes, they get the they get the opportunity to do something called crisis management, and by that they take more economic control and they destroy the economy. They create a new crisis further and further. And then fractional reserve banking also gives big profits to those who own the system. And fractional reserve banking uses powerful credit control, so they can control the economy whenever they want. Because I told you that the treasury of any country does not have a say in what kind of, how much money supply would the entire economy have. Actually, the main thing which has the very big power is the central bank of that country. The central bank can issue or decrease the fractional reserve banking method. They can control the credit, thereby they can create any crisis whenever they want to. Leaving aside all the conspiracy theories, I would like to tell you one thing, that every single country's central bank has been aiming to destroy the economy of the world, or at least of its own country. I can give you many examples like the Central Bank of Greece and also Banco de Central Venezuela and RBI and the Federal Reserve, of course, the Bank of England, the Bank of France. All of these big central banks which have been involved in huge scams are very powerful. The reason is that they have powerful credit control. And banks of smaller countries, central banks of smaller countries are often controlled severely by central banks of bigger countries. So it's a monopoly between the big countries like America and Europe, which are in turn controlled by their own central banks, which are in turn controlled by big bankers, which I shall explain to you later. Already we have seen the Federal Reserve, which was a real a shareholding company, and most probably all the other companies like RBI do not have a shareholding method, and all the shares are bought out by the government and it's totally nationalized. But I would like to tell you one more thing, that when when a bank is nationalized, it actually can operate in more secrecy. And the next thing is that we have another thing that is very dangerous. Fractional reserve banking has something called the fractional reserve ratio. When I told you about the central banking system and about the fractional reserve banking, I mentioned a small point, that was the reserve ratio. That means if you deposit $100 in a bank, the reserve ratio is something like how much they keep. But what if the reserve ratio is too less, like just 2%? So if you just give $100 to them, they actually can just keep very little of that $100 and give the rest out. So this 2% of $100 would be such a small reserve ratio, and that would multiply the thing even more. So it would actually become $5,000 in the end. And most banks have a very little fractional reserve ratio. Nothing is managed by big central banks. Abhigya, what did you do? And also, fractional reserve ratio also gives very powerful credit control, and it also provides money for nothing to the international bankers. So basically, with this fractional reserve banking, they're able to actually control the entire economy, and they're able to make money out of really nothing. And then the international bankers have also one more arm. Coming to the second arm, we see the UN. UN actually engages in big international politics. So they make nations dependent. It's still one huge force. They give ceasefires whenever they want. Well, you might think that's a peacekeeping thing. But I would say it is a huge, dangerous agenda to destroy countries. The UN has also, the UN and the World Trade Organization destroy poor countries and finish them to the ground, and also are planning to bring down bigger countries like the USA and Europe, as they have done even before. The League of the Nations was one attempt before, but now it's the UN. The League of the Nations was destroyed by some very influential presidents, but then it was brought back again after the presidents were killed, just murdered off, and the presidents which destroyed it were just thrown out. Like Calvin, I just forgot the name, but he was a very great president who cut off all ties with the League of Nations and thereby destroy the League of Nations. But again, once they destroy one institution, it is bound to come back again in another form and even more powerful because of lots of social propaganda. And that's what happened. If any big UN kind of organization comes out suddenly, out of a sudden, then won't be very impressive. If it comes once and is destroyed and it comes again, then the efforts of the people who have destroyed it will be known as criminal efforts. So that's what they've been trying to do. And UN has one more arm, that is the UNICEF. UNICEF has education control. They actually control the education of every single country. So they actually control the input of whatever children should learn. That's also so bad. So they're actually controlling the education. By controlling education, it is very important for us to know that this kind of moral input control and the vaccination control dumbs down the entire public. You should, I think you should be watching a documentary called Vaccine Nation if you have any argument towards this. Because some people have serious arguments towards anti-vaccine programs. But I really have a lot of information to prove that anti-vaccine is actually very important to know. And it's actually very true that vaccines have been created for the purpose of depopulation and have dangerous metals in them. So vaccines and also junk food and all of these things to dumb down the entire public. And UNESCO is another big organization. They keep occupying places all over the world and sometimes even stealing natural resources from a country. WHO is, and UNESCO of course is a propaganda agency, which is, it actually makes UN look like a very beautiful thing. And I just forgot to mention the World Trade Organization here, but the World Health Organization is aiming at two big things. One is depopulation and the second one is suffering and deaths of people. So why are they actually doing everything? The main key goal is actually depopulation. They vaccinate the people, they force allopathy, and they just keep having this propaganda because there's been latest propaganda out not having children and parents should decide not to have any child, and also depopulation. There are many programs to depopulate people, and genocides are still going on. Junk food has been released as a tool of depopulation, and the World Health Organization is continuing to support allopathy so much that allopathy is actually killing people badly. The figure of allopathy is declining, but still hospitals are everywhere, so people have no other choice but to use allopathy or to use home medicine. So my dear friends, do not get scared of anything like home medicine, because there are many examples of many people who have used home medicine to cure all their diseases. And by God's grace, even we have cured many of our diseases with home medicine, because actually diseases come to everyone, and it's very important to cure them, but don't go to any allopathic place. Any disease that we want to cure, we always use the Ayurvedic home medicine method. Abhigya, why are you shaking the camera and dropping the tripod? And it also cause suffering and death by releasing new viruses. There are a few alleged cases that are being proven now, that there have been a few group of people who are releasing new viruses into the atmosphere, and they actually engineer epidemics, and also they have big control over psychology, and they have these big programs like MK Ultra, etc., and so many other things. So to have a big picture of what they're doing, I think we should get to know their ideals. The ideals are depopulation, total control over every single person before depopulation. So they want total control, and the second step is depopulation. So they just want a few group of people to live in this world, people who would serve them for the rest of their lives, and people who are dependent on them. A few bunch of people who are very necessary for them, and they are dependent on those people. So that's what they're trying to do actually. The third wing of these big international bankers is the most important one, and which has brought down most countries to their knees. That is the central banking system. This central banking system has private control. We have seen the examples of Greece and Venezuela and various other countries which have almost gone bankrupt. We have seen Greece with its sovereign debt of boggling billions of dollars, and actually deficit billions of dollars. So why aren't other countries which are having a so-called sound economy with a growing bubble realizing that their bubble will also burst? Right now, the countries which are having a big bubble growth are one, India and China. So they are having a big bubble growth, and one more point is India is actually overtaking China in its economic growth. So I'm telling you, there's a bubble building up. It is already built up in the stock market. Our stock market has gone above 35,000 points, just imagine. So the bubble has built up, and we just don't know when the tiger is going to pounce out. We just don't know when it's going to burst. And the central banks have private control. There are two kinds of private control. One is indirect control and one is direct control. Direct control is just like the Federal Reserve and the World Bank, etc., because they are all directly controlled. And indirect control is of course like through corruption, RBI, and through political control, BOE, and Bank of France, RBI, Bank of England. All of them have big political, and Bank of England actually ranges from very, very past old age times when there were big families ruling the economy of this world, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. I mean, not the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds at least. And also some bankers like Sir William Patterson. So these kind of bankers actually were present, and their ideal was the same, to control the entire finance of this world. From 1694 itself, this kind of ideal has been there. There have been big families who have tried to consolidate and create slavery for every single country that they have touched. And central banks have a centralized, non-controlled authority. That means a central bank has such power over the government that the government is actually nothing compared to the central banks. They're like the second governments. And whether you know about a government or not, of course they are a government. Most people in India actually don't know the real functions of the RBI. And most people who know the government don't know the RBI. That's the problem. The RBI, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the Bank of China, whatever these central banks are, they are generally very secretive. People don't actually know what's going on behind them. And then we have this. Currency issue is also one more thing that central banks have a power over. So when a central bank has power over currency issue, they have power to inflate or deflate the economy whenever they want to. They actually steal your time and freedom. They have total banking control over you. They actually hold an illusion over you, and their currency or the issue is totally fiat. So what is that? The money that you have in your bank account is just an illusion. There's nothing. It's just typed into your computer. It has no permanent value. It has only temporary value. It cannot store your economic energy for a long period of time. That's the truth about every single piece of paper that you keep in your bank. Every single letter or number that you keep in your bank is just a waste. So get your money out of the bank, invest them in bullion or any other thing like that, and invest them in land, cows, because they are real assets. Cows are, so actually some people say that cows are economically temporary assets. That means anytime they come and anytime they go. But I would have to tell you something. Cows are not economically temporary. Even if you consider them economically temporary, they are animals, and economic people consider them as animals, but I consider them as spiritual, great, beautiful animals, as according to the Shastras, the ancient Hindu scriptures. But one more thing is that if you think cows are economically temporary, then I would like to tell you that cows have a lineage, and their milk, their curd, their urine and their dung also have potential economic value. So they are never economically temporary, because their effects, whatever they leave on a person's family or a person's health, spiritual effects, everything is permanent. And the next thing is that central banks have the power to inflate and deflate the economy. So because of this, they can create a crisis in a deflationary way, or they can create a crisis in an inflationary way or hyperinflationary way, and they can they actually push the World Bank agenda. And right now, the big bankers are conspiring to actually create a World Bank which would control there's already a World Bank, but it's not having that much say over the economy. It has a 90% say over the economy, but they want the entire 100% say over the economy. They just want to centralize everything. They want a world government, they want a World Bank and a world currency. Well, the world currency is going to be something that we can't even think now, but there's already one world currency, that is the SDR, the special drawing rights. But I don't think it's in the hands of every single person now. But still, there will come a time in the future where everybody will have to be forced to use the same kind of currency, and there will be rules that will be, just done on the boards of countries, and it will be spread across the entire globe, and nobody can escape from the ruthless, dangerous powers of that huge government. It is dangerous to our independence of individuality and the entire social economy, or whatever it is, and the politics of every single country. It is a danger to the independence of all of these elements if a world bank, a world government, a world currency, and all these big world figures get into the world and control the globe. That's what I would say. And then world central banks, of course, are like IMF, the BIS, and the World Bank. So the BIS is also a very big bank, and it's a central bank that is controlling the world economy. It's called the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. Then we have this World Bank, of course. That's also a very scamming, evil bank, and it keeps making rules for various countries. In fact, the UN and the WTO and the World Bank have been one of the biggest causes of the big problems in Venezuela. They actually ordered Venezuela. First of all, they created socialism in Venezuela and nationalization of various big organizations. And then they actually broke down the socialism by giving Venezuela a fine of $720 million. That is one of the reasons for the Venezuelan crisis. And that's why people in Venezuela are actually 89% of them are below poverty line. Just imagine the people in Venezuela. Everybody is damn poor, and there is no spirituality there. Everybody is bereft of spirituality. Everybody is below poverty line. So what will happen if a country is bereft of spirituality and has 89% of them all below poverty line? So what is going to happen? Crime, of course. The crime rates are also very high in Venezuela. That's what they've done, actually. So the IMF actually gives loans to countries under crisis. India is actually heavily indebted to the World Bank and the IMF. And the IMF also gives loans to developing countries. And IMF also has something called a special drawing rights. And these SDRs, in India we have 13,114 SDRs, and the US has above 84,000 SDRs. So the voting power of each country is based on the SDRs. So they actually establish voting power on SDRs and make countries buy lots of SDRs, and US has the highest amount of SDRs, and that's why the US economy is controlling the other economies of the world. That's one more example why the Federal Reserve would have such a high power over the RBI in the voting power. I mean, not directly, but the voting of two different countries, one based on the wealth of that country, is of course dangerous. And loans to developing countries, like the BIS does, the Bank of International Settlements actually gives loans to these kind of developing countries, and that's how they destroy the national independence of that country. Talking about individual independence, that's already lost by having big governments like this. We have also got destruction of national independence. Now, countries are themselves not independent. Loans to countries under crisis throws them into deeper debt, and that gives them more control. And then we have one more big part of the international banking octopus, that is media and entertainment. Here comes all the albums, the songs, and every single thing which just create fan following, and there's some paid social media which puts they antagonize the public with the wrong people. So there are some people who haven't done anything, or there's some people for example, I shall give you an example of the Hindu-Muslim riots and fights. 99.9% of the Hindus would not have ever had any ill feeling, or homicidal feeling towards Muslims, and 99.9% of Muslims would have not had any homicidal feelings towards Hindus. There will only be 0.1% of both the categories who would be employed by politicians to create a scenario. Politicians know very well how to create scenarios of conflict, and that's why they pay so much. And these 0.1 people, they are rowdies and rogues and whatever they are. They start firing at people, killing people, and the whole category is thrown by the media to get antagonized with the other category. That's what is happening. And TV channels and news and online, these online and offline sites, or whatever they are, online official sites, they all antagonize the public so much. And then we have these songs, etc., fan following, and we have paid social media, we have Facebook, we have YouTube, we have WhatsApp, and all of these big social medias. We have Google, and they direct the people away from that. I think most of the youth will know the names of the big pop stars and rock stars of their own country, or even international ones, but they might not even know simple things about which men are crashing the world and what they've done to the economy, and why it's so important to know that rather than knowing some rock star, names of some rock star. They actually have it by heart of all the rock stars' names, the bands and everything like that, and they're just losing their life for that kind of thing. War profits is another big branch of this big octopus. War profits is by many different kinds of ways. One is financing revolutions. So what does war and revolution do to a big banking economy? Some wars can also be dangerous for the big bankers, isn't it? But I would tell you that the big bankers, since BC, before Christ, had learnt that countries which are under crisis will borrow money to subtract their economy or to fight wars. So bankers can loan money created out of nothing, or maybe real money, to the governments, and therefore gain control over the government and get interest over the government. from the government. That's what these big banks are actually conspiring to do. For that, they finance revolutions, they create wars so that they can just loan out money to somebody. It's like throwing a person into crisis and forcing them to take a loan from you. So you throw your neighbor into total poverty and tell them, I'm going to save you from poverty, and get interest on that. That's what they're doing. So I shall give you some examples of how they financed wars and revolutions. First of all, revolutions. The Russian Revolution, when the Tsars were overthrown, at that time, the big bankers, especially the Schiffs, they loaned out 20 million US dollars towards sponsoring the Russian Revolution. That's why the Russian Revolution was just collapsed. The Russian monarchy was just collapsed, even though it had such a huge army. Because the Tsars were refusing to have a big control economic system like the other countries. So the big bankers here sponsored this kind of communism. You might think that communism is against the bankers and actually deprives them of all of the things that they have. I tell you, communism only deprives normal people of owning land, etc. Whereas it actually helps the big guys to live a happier and easier and more controllable life, and also they control the rest of the public with their dangerous tool of communism. And the next thing is that by war, they actually force the central banks to print currency into an oblivion. Because when when war happens, the central banks actually need lots of money. So they start printing a lot of money. That creates hyperinflation. And once they create hyperinflation, it creates dictatorship, and dictatorship creates societal and political problems. To solve these societal and political problems, they again print lots of currency. It results in war and hyperinflation again. Again, hyperinflation brings another dictator. The dictator is brought down, but war again results. And because of this war, there is more hyperinflation, and this cycle keeps resulting again and again and again. This is a circle of hyperinflation. It all starts with war. So to create war and get countries into this vicious cycle, they actually use politics, they use corruption, they have total military control. If I tell you that most of the countries having their armies all have microchipped armies, most of them, like Iran, Iraq, and the US army, and the Russian army, they're all microchipped people. You might be very angry hearing this. Yeah.
Cover even financial wars, sir?
Sorry?
Can you cover even financial war?
Yeah, sorry. I'm talking about this here.
Okay.
So they actually force central banks to print currency so much. They have total military control of over the economy and over the total military. And they also finance revolutions. They finance wars, and Napoleonic wars especially were financed by them. Now the records are being broken open that Nathan Rothschild had financed both sides of the war and was okay with any side winning or losing. When he heard that Duke of Wellington had overpowered Napoleon, he was more happy because Napoleon was a staunch, he was not allowing the Bank of France to lend any money to him for the war. He was controlling the entire finance of his country. He said that the hand that lends is higher than the hand that takes. So he did not want any big bank like the Bank of France to control him. That's why they killed him. They threw him into exile and they finished him there. So he does not come again if there's any possibility. And World War I, World War II, and Hitler. Hitler was actually financed by the Fort Knox gold takeaway. This is a big scam. I shall explain to you in the later episodes. But the Fort Knox gold scam is a very hot topic which has been shut down now for many years. And also World War III is what I think is going to happen, and this is being financed. You can see the moves of these guys. Donald Trump and the North Korean dictators is all moving just like it seems to be. They want a war to result, so they're having these kind of discussions here and there with communism and capitalism as natak suits, costume suits for their evil operations behind their conspiracies. And then we have precious metal thefts, the Fort Knox gold takeaway, the demonetization of gold in India, the demonetization of silver in the USA, and the IMF, WB and Bank of England and the Goldman Sachs, Indian, Greek, Venezuelan bailouts. Actually, the memory card got full, so now we're continuing. The IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of England, the Union Bank of Switzerland, and big banks like the Goldman Sachs Bank and these kind of banks are continuing to rob every single country of their gold. That's why big countries like Switzerland, etc. are so damn rich. And that's why the Bank of England is such a big, rich country. England is rich with debt, but Bank of England is surely a rich bank, not a country, sorry. And the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is also a very dangerous institution.
Yeah,
the silver
shake the tripod.
You were shaking over there. So silver demonetization in the USA was also a hand the hand in glove of these big bankers. Demonetization of gold in India is very recent. And the next thing is that the economic deflation of every single country is also induced by these kind of precious metal thefts. Then we have this worldwide crisis. Why are they creating crisis? Of course, because they need more control. They have created a crisis 1837 in the USA, and they had the Great Depression in 1930, and they had the problems in India. They had conflicts. They had the Great Depression, and they had the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, which destroyed millions of Americans and destroyed the rest of the world too economically. And 1991 they did it in India, and they also have done it in Greece. They have done it in Venezuela. If central banks ever have done very good things, why have they created so much crisis, and that too planned crisis, and that too crisis which have been now found out to be the hand in glove of these big bankers? Why is the question. So socio-political crisis, economic deflation, which creates hyperinflation, and they do so many other things like that. Why are governments printing currency like crazy? Because they don't want to get into a deflation. Well, if they do get into a deflation, of course, then the country's economy will go down. But again, it will again result in hyperinflation because they're printing so much. So most of the countries will either go into hyperinflation or deflation. So this is what is happening actually. So you saw the you actually saw the 8 tools of the big banking octopus. And all of these tools are very important before we assess banking. So, thank you. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Ram. Om Namah Shivaya. Praise the Lord and Assalamu Alaikum.